Thank you so much. It's great to be with TCC SA and Northwestern University in St. Cloud, and also St. Cloud State University is also participating tonight. So it's great to be with you. My name is Dr. Carl Werner. This all began for me in 1979. I was 19 years old, and uh, I was a second year in medical school, and I believed in evolution. And one of my classmates asked me out to lunch, and they asked me three questions, which made me question evolution. He asked me about the origin of the universe, which we're going to discuss tonight, the origin of life, which also we're going to discuss, and the fossil record. And his questions were so profound that it made me realize that maybe my belief in evolution was wrong, but I couldn't figure it out. Over the ensuing, whatever, 45 years till today, I've been working on this, traveling, interviewing, photographing, going to dig sites all over the world. My wife and I traveled 289,000 miles to, I don't know, 16 countries, something like that. We took 300,000 photographs. And in the course of this process, I'm trying to figure out, is evolution true or is evolution not true? Because I had a lot of questions. Even if his three priming questions were true, I still didn't know what to do with dinosaurs, the change of fauna over time, et cetera, et cetera. And now here I am in the year 2025, and I'm giving a talk saying that the theory of evolution was overturned last year. Now, nobody knows this. I'm way ahead of the pack on this one, but it's because we did the interviews. And so if you can't find this information on the internet, you'll have to go to my book series and video series to see where I'm coming up with this information. So everyone needs to bookmark this show and share it with their friends, because naturalism, the theory that everything came about naturally through the Big Bang, abiogenesis, or the origin of life, and evolution, has now been disproved. In the future, historians are going to look back and say it was last year, 2024, that naturalism collapsed. Today, I am going to demonstrate this with undeniable detailed references and facts. Now, don't expect the world's evolutionists to change their mind after watching this presentation. The famous German physicist Max Planck, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1918, said this: "Science advances one funeral at a time." He wrote, "A new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up. Those in the audience who are open-minded likely will be convinced tonight that naturalism has been overturned in 2024. Naturalism is the explanation that everything came about naturally without God creating. The universe formed naturally through the Big Bang, the origin of life, bacteria formed in the primordial soup, then the 7 animal groups formed, et cetera, et cetera. That is the basis for naturalism. And I'm going to show you that each one of these bullet points has been overturned. And you can't just sit there and just not agree or disagree. You have to make your judgment whether each of these bullet points that I've sufficiently presented, is it disproved? Because I think that all 9 of these bullet points is disproved, but that does us no good. You have to judge each one as I'm making my X's on these bullet points, whether you agree that I have made the case that that bullet point was disproved. The origin of the universe through the Big Bang was disproved in 2003, 2004. And here's a quote from this PBS show called The Elegant Universe that was distributed in 2003 by this Professor Overturned, professor of physics and astronomy, and he presents the first problem with the Big Bang. On the show, he asked, do I really believe that the universe was a big bang out of nothing? It's a problem. And what he's pointing out is the law of conservation of matter and energy. That is a law of physics that says matter and energy cannot be created from nothing. So, how could you then create the universe from nothing in the Big Bang without violating that law of physics? In this same show, 2003, this professor of physics at Columbia University said there's always been a couple of problems with the Big Bang theory. First, when you squeeze the entire universe into an infinitesimally small but stupendously dense package, at a certain point, according to the Big Bang, our laws of physics simply break down. They just don't make sense anymore. Now, that is not words of a man who's suggesting that the Big Bang works. He's saying quite the opposite. And this next person that appeared on the show was the winner of the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2004. He is the chairman of theoretical physics at the University of California, and he reported the physics formulas we use in the Big Bang theory start giving answers that are nonsensical. We find total disaster. Everything breaks down and we're stuck. The following year, in 2004, this article then came out, Bucking the Big Bang by Dr. Werner, and he says that our ideas about the history of the universe are dominated by Big Bang theory. But when you read the first paragraph, the Big Bang theory relies on a growing number of hypothetical entities, things that we have never observed. Inflation, dark matter, and dark energy are the most prominent. Without these, there would be a fatal contradiction between the observations made by astronomers and the predictions of the Big Bang theory. In no other field of physics would this continual recourse to new hypothetical objects be accepted as a way of bridging the gap between theory and observation. It would at the least raise serious questions about the validity of the underlying theory. But the Big Bang theory can't survive without these fudge factors. Who wrote this? Dr. Werner, Eric Werner, and 33 other scientists, physicists signed this article that was published in New Scientist. Who were these scientists? Scientists from the University of Cambridge, scientists from Los Alamos National Laboratory, the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, the Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics, the University for Center of Astronomy and Physics, Cornell University. This is basically the top astronomy units and the top physics and theoretical physics institutions of the world. And there are scientists at these that said this does not work. So anybody that was neutral on this topic, did the universe form from the Big Bang, after watching what I just presented, would say that the origin of the universe, it's unknown because the Big Bang doesn't work. And if you would suggest that the Big Bang does work, you have to start answering questions. Where did the matter come from that's in the universe today? Because that can't form naturally. Where does the energy form? And then a whole bunch of problems. For example, if you think that the energy created matter in the formula E equals mc squared, when energy creates matter like hydrogen or helium, then you should also be producing antimatter. And yet there is no antimatter present in the universe. If you think that the universe formed and it was a big compression and the small compression of all matter into this dot, then there should have been monopoles that were formed, and monopoles should still be seen today in the universe, but they're not. If you believe that energy created matter, then that would be limited to the first three elements in the periodic table, hydrogen, helium, and lithium, before fusion elements began. And if that's true, there should be stars and that we should be able to see in the universe that are composed of only hydrogen, helium, and lithium, the so-called population 3 stars, but none of this is present. So all the predictions of the Big Bang do not work. And so as an objective person, I say it doesn't work. And if the winner of the Nobel Prize says it doesn't work, good enough for me because I never took a physics class in college. So I'm going to go with what they're telling me. The next problem with naturalism is the origin of life. The theory of evolution says that around 4.5 billion years ago, I don't believe any of these dates, by the way, that the Earth formed, and it kind of looked like the surface of the moon does today with rocks and dust and nothing living. There was an atmosphere on the Earth when it formed, according to evolution scientists, but the molecules were just simple molecules like methane, which only had 5 atoms, 4 hydrogen atoms, and a carbon. This is important. I'll tell you why here in a second. And the Earth had water on it, 1 oxygen and 2 atoms of hydrogen, H2O, and it had simple molecule of carbon dioxide, 1 atom of carbon and 2 oxygen. But these are all simple molecules. But the first living thing that would have to form, because a hippopotamus didn't come out of their rocks, it'd have to be the most simple life form like a bacteria. A bacteria, and in fact all living cells today, have these macromolecules in them, and that would be DNA, RNA, enzymes, proteins, and cell membrane. Now when I say the bacteria had this, but it's also the cats today have these particles in their cells. The oak trees have these. Every animal and plant on Earth, anything that's alive, has these macromolecules. But here's the problem. These macromolecules are monster molecules. They're enormous with thousands and thousands of atoms, and they do not form from the simple molecules. This is a problem because the DNA, which is like a twisted ladder here, doesn't form from simple molecules. And same way with this enzyme or protein, look how many atoms are in this molecule. Thousands and thousands of atoms are in these. But methane, water, carbon dioxide, these simple molecules do not form the necessary components of all living things, DNA, RNA, enzymes, and proteins. They never can, will, could form DNA, RNA, proteins, and enzymes. Impossible because of the laws of biochemistry. This would mean that the original life from chemicals on a sterile Earth 4 billion years ago could not have occurred because DNA, RNA, enzymes, proteins, cell membranes do not, cannot, will not ever form by mixing up these simple molecules. So again, anybody objective, I believe, would agree with me that the original life from chemicals is a made-up story in the primordial soup. And so we're kind of having a bad day if you're evolutionists, because already the first 2 necessary steps are overturned. The next step in naturalism is you have to go from a bacteria to the 7 animal groups. Now, you could take all the animals on the Earth today, and 99% of them fit into these 7 groups. They would be either the corals, or the sponges, or the shellfish, or the worms, or the arthropods like trilobites or insects, or the vertebrates like fish, or the echinoderms like the stemmed crinoid. All animals fit into these 7 groups, and all 7 of these groups have to evolve from this first simplest life that we just showed couldn't form in the first place, this bacteria. This problem now I am now explaining is called the Cambrian explosion. And it says this: we have no intermediate animals between this bacteria and the fossil in the lowest layer, a coral. We don't have any intermediates between this bacteria and the trilobite, this bacteria and the worm, this bacteria and the sponge. We have lots of these fossils. We have thousands of sea pens and millions of corals. We have millions of fossil sponges. We have millions of fossil shellfish. We have tens of thousands of fossil worms. We have 500,000 fossil fish. We have tens of millions of echinoderms, but we have nothing between this simplest bacteria, which we said we don't know how it formed in the first place, and this. Now, this bacteria is not this big. It's microscopic. We would have to shrink it down to that size. And now look at this problem. You would think if evolution was true, you would see an animal halfway evolved between a bacteria and this 2-foot tall sea pen, which is in the lowest layer. But there is no 1-foot, half bacteria, half sea pen. You would think we would have an animal evolving in multiple steps from this bacteria to the first fish, which is in the lower Cambrian rock layer. Just imagine how many intermediates would be between a bacteria and a fish. A fish has a mouth, the bacteria does not, so you have to form a mouth. It has an intestinal tract, it has an anus, it has a heart, it has blood vessels, it has blood, it has a vertebral column, it has a spinal cord, it has a dorsal fin. So halfway between this bacteria, which you can't even see, and this fish, you need to start having an animal that's fossilized to prove evolution that would be half fish or quarter fish or a fish that doesn't yet have its vertebrae. But there is nothing. And it's not because the fossil record is poor. See, the fossil record, as of this year, is rich. There are 1 billion, that's a B, 1 billion fossils that have been collected by the museums. It roughly works out to 1,000 fossils. 1,000 museums each have about 1 million fossils, but you can get the actual numbers from my book, this first green book that's in my collection. I want to show you how rich the fossil record is, even in hard to fossilize animals and artifacts, that if we have this many fossils, we should be able to see the Cambrian explosion of the bacteria going to the fish or the bacteria going to the coral, but we don't. Here is a picture of fossil bacteria. There are tens of thousands of fossil bacteria which are difficult to fossilize because they don't have any bones in them. Here is a fossil containing fish eggs. Now, if you've ever seen a fish egg, you know that it's very soft. It'd be very difficult to fossilize, and yet we have fossils of these small fish eggs. This is animal embryos, and we have them in different sizes, 4-cell, 8-cell, 16-cell, 32-cell. And these animal embryos are soft. There's no bones in them. You wouldn't think they would be fossilized. But again, we have fossil embryos. Here is a fossil jellyfish. Think of a jellyfish in the ocean. It's just jelly, really. You couldn't even imagine it would fossilize, but yes, here it is, fossilized. Fossil worms, they have no bones in them. They would be very difficult, but we have thousands and thousands of fossil worms like this worm on display. And difficult to fossilize petals of a flower, or the cattail head, that's just very soft, and yet here's a fossil cattail head. In fact, 90% of the animals and plants that we see on the earth today, we can find as fossils, which suggests that the fossil record is not poor, but it's excellent. 1 billion fossils, and we can see 90% of what's ever lived today in the fossil record in these lower layers. And yet, and here's another one, alligator poop. Now, this would not be easily fossilized. Poop is poop, it's soft. And yet we have even this artifact fossilized. So this is beyond the pale that you would think that evolution occurred when there is no evolution of the 7 animal groups, despite all of these fossils, including all of these animals here. Most of these pictures I took myself, and we visited these, either where the fossil collections were, the Cambrian at the Smithsonian, or we traveled to Australia at Flinders Range there and photographed the sea pen. So I know this is real because I've been there. I know what's in the fossil record. There is nothing in between. And the experts we interviewed also said the same thing. These things just suddenly appear. So again, the theory of evolution, if you're an evolutionist, is it's collapsed. Everybody could really just go home right now. I don't really need to go any further. If you can't create the universe, you can't create the first living thing, and you can't create the seven animal phyla, but it gets worse than this, if that's possible. Now we're going to look at the origin of animals within a phyla. Uh, for example, one of the phyla was vertebrates, and there's a fish. Well, we're going to do just the vertebrate phyla. And, the fish are supposedly turned into amphibian, which turned into a reptile, which turned into a bird, and a mammal, which turned into a monkey, ape, and human. But in 1977, this atheistic, secularist, Marxist professor, in other words, he wasn't Christian and he wasn't believing in creation. He was the face of evolution. He is Dr. Stephen Jay Gould from Harvard University. So this is 2 years before I had this dinner date with my friend in medical school. And somehow my friend figured this out and learned about this, that there is a trade secret in paleontology. Not only is there no evolution from the bacteria to the seven animal groups, but even within the animal groups, for example, vertebrates, they are missing. And that's exactly opposite of what evolution would predict. So here's this from this article. Stephen Gould writes, the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as a trade secret of paleontology. Now, why would you make that a secret? You should be telling everybody that goes into every museum, this is the facts. We still believe in evolution, but there's no proofs in it in the fossil record, so to speak. But no, they keep it as a trade secret because they know people would abandon evolution if they learn this. And again, from the same article, he writes, the fossil record offered by all the museums, this billion fossils, offers no support for gradual change. In other words, they can't find a bat forming from a mouse or a whale forming from a land animal. He says that the new species appear in the rock layers suddenly without intermediate links to the ancestors in the older rock layers. In other words, each animal group just shows up without intermediates, totally against the premises of evolution. I want to show you some examples real quick. They have 500,000 fish have been collected. Debbie, my wife Debbie, is my partner on all this, and she took all these pictures at different museums. You can see these fish fossils are fantastic. And they also know of billions more of fossil fish in the layers, and I can tell you where they're at, but they don't want to collect them. There's no point. It's just repeat, repeat, repeat. These 500,000 fish, according to this fish evolution expert that we interviewed for book 1, video 1 at the Museum Victoria, Melbourne, says there's no intermediates or connections between the first fish, which I showed you that was in the Cambrian, and all these other fish. In other words, these dots mean that there's no fossils. Yes, they have fossils of lampreys. Yes, they have fossils of sharks. Yes, they have fossils of ratfish, coelacanth, and lungfish. But they have no fossils showing one fish changing into another fish. Each of these 500,000 fish just suddenly appear. I don't know what better evidence you would want that this thing doesn't work. Here's another example of the trade secret. There's 100,000 dinosaurs have been found. And according to this scientist who we interviewed, Dr. David Weishampel, who wrote the Bible on dinosaur evolution, the Dinosauria, he said in his interview, and it's on the video, you can watch it, that although we have these 100,000 dinosaurs, not one dinosaur has an ancestor. Each dinosaur does not have an ancestor. Basically, he's saying what Gould said, the dinosaur groups, whether it's Tyrannosaurus, sauropods, armored dinosaurs, ceratopsians, just shows up, again, defeating the predictions of evolution. The trade secret on evolution for bats is that there's 1,000 fossil bats. And look at these fossils. You can see the wing membrane. You can see their ears. You can see what they had for lunch. These fossils are exquisite. Debbie took all these pictures at the various sites we went to. And despite 1,000 fossil bats, according to these two bat evolution experts, now I would, if I had kids, I'm sure my kids would ask me, Dad, what did you do that was the most important thing you did in your life? Well, I went around the world and interviewed bat evolution experts. It was fantastic, son. No, I'm just being a little tongue in cheek here, but we interviewed multiple, not just these two, but multiple bat evolution experts, and they said, yes, we have fossil bats, and we think bats evolved from maybe a little mammal like a tree shrew with short arms, and the short arms became long arms, and no wing membrane became a wing membrane, and an animal that just stood on the ground can now fly. But the animals in between, like an animal with a longer arm but no wing membrane, or a very long arm and wing membrane, but it still didn't have the muscles in the chest yet, there are no animals in between the tree shrew and the bat, which again goes against the theory of evolution. So anybody objective would say that the origin of animals within phyla just didn't happen. But if there's an evolutionist watching me, he'll say, whoa, 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 wait a minute. You're leaving out the most important information, Carl, because there are good examples in the fossil record of one animal changing into another, a completely different animal, like the whales evolving from a land animal, like the birds evolving from dinosaurs, and like apes evolving from men. You have just presented the worst 99%, but you haven't given us a good 1% or less of these three best fossil proofs of evolution. And so I'm going to do this in just a second after I go through the mechanisms of evolution. But if you are honest and you really are challenging evolution, you have to go do these interviews like we did. We did interviews with the whale evolution, the bird evolution, and the human evolution experts. You can't just read a book. You can't just read 1,000 articles. You would never get the answer. You have to go to these guys and interview them. And once you do, the whole thing explodes, because even the best three proofs don't work at all. And I'll show that to you. I know that's hard to believe, and just hold on if you're an evolutionist, but just give me just a few minutes to go through these before you judge me on this. But we can at least say 99% of the animal groups just show up and the within the phyla. Now, I wanted to show you that the mechanisms of evolution don't work. There's basically two, and both of them don't work. One is this idea that an animal can adapt and pass those adaptations on to the next generation. Darwin believed this, and he said it was a reason for how evolution occurred. He called it the law of use and disuse, and this is why it doesn't work. Darwin thought if you exercised a horse and got it really strong muscles, that the offspring of the horse would be born with large muscles. He wrote that in The Origin of Species. That's foolish. You can exercise a horse all you want. The baby will not be affected by the exercise. That would be like a weightlifter in the gym gets big muscles and his child is born with big biceps. That's stupid. It doesn't happen. Why does that not work? Because, you know, the horse and the weightlifter adapted, but see, they can't pass it on because the body is divided into two types of cells. The body cells, you know, nose cells, muscle cells, finger cells, face cells, and the reproductive cells. And in the reproductive cells, for the women, it's the eggs or in the ovary, and in the men, it's the sperm in the testicles. The body cells, like lifting weights, no matter how big you get them, do not signal to the reproductive cells. They cannot talk to the reproductive cells. You can make these cells bigger, but you cannot change the DNA in the sperm or the egg. And so anything you adapt to, well, fine, you can adapt, but you can't pass it to the next generation. Darwin didn't get that, but it was disproved in 1889 by August Weismann, and you can read that in my book 1. The second mechanism of evolution is that our DNA in our reproductive cells, the sperm for the male and the egg for the female, the DNA had mutations in the DNA, and they accidentally formed new proteins. And I'm going to show you why this doesn't work. I'm just going to take it down to just kind of simple terms. Okay, you want mutations to get evolution. That doesn't sound like a good idea, by the way. So you want mutations. How could you get mutations? One way is to go to Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island and just lay on the ground next to the radiation, and then you can get mutations. That's one way you get radiation. Another one is to drink a gallon of Roundup, because that causes mutations and cancer. Another is to drink benzene. Or another way to get mutations is to go in your basement and suck in all the air from the cracks and get radon in you, or go to a radiation treatment center and ask to be laid under the radiation, the cobalt. See, mutations, just intuitively, we know that mutations cause damage, but mutations, random accidental mutations, are to be how evolution occurs. So let's pretend you have one mutation in one egg cell. So here's why evolution can't work by mutation. So if you do something to cause mutation, like take in radiation, where does that mutation occur? Well, your body has 70 trillion cells. So you might get the first mutation in your hand, and then your second mutation could be in your ear, and your third mutation could be in your kneecap cell, and your fourth mutation, but it's only when you've had about 70 trillion mutations can you get the first mutation in the first correct cell, which is the egg or the sperm. Well, that seems impossible. How would you get a string of mutations in a egg or sperm, string of mutations on the DNA strand, when you have to get the mutation to be in the right cell? So the chance of you hitting the right cell is 1 in 70 trillion. And even if you get to the mutation in the correct cell, the egg that you're going to then produce a child with, then it has to be in the right location. Well, in humans, we have 3.5 billion letters of DNA. What is the chance of you getting the mutation next to your first mutation? It's 1 in 3.5 billion. What is the chance of a mutation being in the right cell at the right location? It's 1 over 70 trillion times 1 over 3.5 billion. And that's just the second mutation. And each mutation thereafter has the same odds. So in order to mutate, you would have to have trillions and trillions and trillions of mutations. So the chance of you getting enough mutations in one reproductive cell is one chance out of a billion trillion, billion trillion, billion trillion, billion trillion, billion trillion. And I'm not overstating this, billion trillion, billion trillion, billion trillion, because you need about 300 mutations in a row to form a gene. So that's basically impossible. When the number gets that small, one out of that, that it really is effectively a zero chance of you being able to create one gene, not to mention you need 20,000 maybe to change from an ape to a human. So I say the mechanisms of evolution do not work. It would take me a lot longer to take it in deeper than that, but you get the sense of where I'm going with that. So now I'm going to show you the 3 best fossil proofs of evolution. And what I've said before is there's all the animal groups just suddenly appear, but these, strangely, these 3 examples override everything. And we're going to believe evolution because the evidence for whales evolving from a land animal is so strong, and the evidence for birds evolving from a dinosaur is so strong, and the evidence that humans evolved from apes is so strong that we're going to ignore all these other 5 problems and say, well, it had to have occurred. How else would it be? Because we know evolution occurred because of these 3. These 3 don't work, though, and that's what we found out, we meaning Debbie and I, when we interviewed these scientists. The walking whale expert that we interviewed was Dr. Phil Gingrich at the University of Michigan, and he made a big splash in 1983. His first walking whale, called Pachycetus, ended up on the cover of Science, which is the official publication for the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Now, why was this so important to be on the front cover? Because Gingrich's Pachycetus had the following. It had four legs like a land animal, but there was flippers on them. You see the flippers? It had a blowhole. Instead of the nostrils at the tip of the snout like a dog, its nostrils were up on top of the skull. Its eyes were on the side of the head like a whale, not on the top of the head like a dog. And its ears were whale ears. It had a combination of whale characters that showed him that it was a walking whale that swam. And so this is the best proof of evolution. Now, you need to understand and remember while we're going through these walking whales, this is the best proof of evolution. All of evolution is hanging on this, okay? And I don't think any evolution scientist would disagree that these are the best three. But as soon as they hear my talk, they're going to want to change them, of course. But when we went to the museum, we realized that this whole thing was made up. This is his diagram, but this is the fossil that was actually found in charcoal gray here. This little fragment on the skull, this little fragment on the lower jaw, and a few teeth. That's all he had. He didn't have flippers. He didn't have the eye on the side of the skull because that part of the skull was missing. And what he said was a whale ear was not, according to the scientists we interviewed. His partner said it's not a whale ear. So he basically took two little bone fragments, then he put them in a whale skull, which that's false idea. And then he added these body parts, and there he has a walking whale. That's how you get on the cover of Science. But a problem came for him in 2001 when the rest of the animal was found. And here is the full skeleton that was found in 2001. And everything he said was bull. It didn't have flippers. It had claws down here. Its eyes weren't on the side like a whale. They were on top like any land animal. The nose was at the tip like a dog. It wasn't on top like a blowhole. And the ear was not. That is why we believe in evolution. And it was all bull. And it's odd, he and his partner, who was his graduate student, were the scientists that found basically all these walking whales and made all the news. And I would want to say, this is odd, because how could just two men that worked in the same office building, same university, same lab, find all the walking whales when no one else can find them? His partner, Dr. Hans Thewissen, found the next walking whale. It was called Ambulocetus. And you can see it was a walking whale because it had four legs, it had a blowhole, and it had a whale ear. Okay, and we interviewed him too. Here is the reconstructed model of Ambulocetus. It looks like it's fully present, but in reality, this is a false skeleton. You can see here it has a blowhole on top, not at nostrils at the tip. It's a beautiful display, but it's all false. When we interviewed him, we asked him if we could photograph the original fossils, which are here on the table. And this is this model that he had hanging up that's made out of plaster. You can see there's a blowhole, but the fossils didn't match this. Smithsonian, they show the same thing. Blowhole, whale ear. But when we laid these fossils, which we took a picture of, and laid them on top of this plaster model, it became clear that the real fossils, which are in orange here, did not have the blowhole. And when we asked him about this, see, there's no tip here. And we asked him about it, he said, yeah, I don't really think it has a blowhole. It's like, what? This is, the whole world is hanging on you and hanging on this evidence. You don't have this bone, and now you don't even think it has a blowhole? No. And how about the ear bone here? Can you show me the ear bone? He showed it to me. I said, that doesn't look like a whale ear. He said, well, it really doesn't to me either. It's really not. You can watch the interview where he admits that the whale ear is not a whale ear. The blowhole is not a blowhole. And this whole thing was falsely created. And remember, this isn't just one of thousands of good proofs. This is the best proof of the three, millions of animals. We have these three animals. The whales is one of them. And this is it. Now, the next walking whale was found by the first guy again, Phil Gingrich, and he found this animal called Rhodocetus. It had a fluke or a whale's tail. See how it's widened at the end? It had flippers. And this was just really spectacular when he announced it. And we interviewed him and we took a picture of his diagram and we took a picture of the bones and we overlaid the bones on his diagram. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, you said it has a whale's tail, but you don't have any bones of the tail? No, I really don't. You said it had flippers, but you don't have any bones of the hands and the feet? No, I really don't. And when we interviewed him, and this is a spectacular interview in our first show, The Grand Experiment, episode 1, where you can see his face, that he knows he's been, you just need to see his face when he's telling us that he doesn't think it has a whale's tail now, and he doesn't think it has flippers. And it's like, wow, that is the best proof of evolution, and yet that one is totally bogus. Now, since then, there's been more come out, but we haven't gone to do all the interviews because this would be a continuous process. They bring up a new fossil, you go do the interview, it's disproved. We disproved all the ones that were accepted when we were doing this project, and they all collapsed. So the next one is flying dinosaurs. You've all heard that birds, like Archaeopteryx, evolved from a meat-eating dinosaur. And I'm going to stop the screen here, and I want to show you what the problem is. See, Archaeopteryx, it looks like a pheasant. It looks like pretty much a normal bird. It can fly and all this. I'm going to stop the screen. Here's the problem. Archaeopteryx is a full bird, and it's in this layer called the Jurassic. Again, I don't believe these dates. I don't believe these names, but we're going to go with it just to show you that they don't work. If Archaeopteryx is at this layer, 150 million years old in Germany, and it can fly, and it's a bird, then where should we look in the fossils below or above it to look for its ancestors, the dinosaurs evolving into this bird? You'd have to look below it, thinking that the layers below it were older. So if the first bird shows up at 150 million years old, let's go back to 160, 170, 180, 190, 200 million years old, and show us which dinosaur evolved that's 200 million years old into Archaeopteryx. We don't know. These are the interviews. 190, do you have the dinosaur that evolved into this first bird? No. 180, do you have an animal that's halfway between a dinosaur and this first bird? No. What we have is nothing, and then just the bird just shows up, just like all the other animals. It's atrocious. No one understands this, but if you just think about this, your ancestors should be below you, and they don't have any fossils below this bird, which is crazy. So I'm going to go back to screen share one more time. And there's bird evolution from dinosaurs. There's 9 reasons it doesn't work. That's the first problem. That's big enough. Second problem is that some experts do not believe birds evolved from dinosaurs. Like this one is a curator of birds from the Smithsonian. He studied more fossil birds than anyone in the world probably. And he says the idea that birds evolved from dinosaurs is a hype, a hoax, a fantasia, and unsubstantiated propaganda. And this is the best proof of evolution. The third problem is that scientists have been adding feathers to dinosaurs when they never found them. Remember Jurassic Park when the 2 kids are being chased through the stainless steel kitchen by 2 velociraptors? You remember those. They just look like dinosaurs. But now these velociraptors, 11 years later, have feathers on them. Why did they put feathers on them? Did they find feathers on velociraptor? No. Here's a sign from the museum. No fossils of feathers have been found. But they put them on there because they believe that birds evolved from dinosaurs. That is atrocious science. The fourth problem with bird evolution is that National Geographic published the best evidence for birds evolving from dinosaurs. It was this fossil, Archaeopteryx lyonensis, and it was a fake. It was a dinosaur tail attached to a bird's body. And why this is so revealing is that they were told, and we did the interviews in episode 1, they were told that this was a fake fossil. Scientists had done the CAT scan of it and realized it was like 5 different animals and bunches of different rocks. And they told National Geographic scientists who wrote this article this is a fake. And guess what they did? They published it anyway. And right before publication, after they're told it was a fake, had a press conference. We just found this perfect intermediate between dinosaurs and birds. This talks to the mindset of the evolution scientists. After that fraud at National Geographic, BBC then went to where that fossil was found in Liaoning, China, and to see where did it come from, what happened, how did that happen. And they discovered a fraud industry in the town where that, in the province where that was found. This show, you can watch it on the internet, The Dinosaur That Fooled the World. They go into these shops where they're taking fossils of different animals and creating them. And I want you to remember this. This industry is in Liaoning. And the next problem is that what they are calling feathered dinosaurs are actually above Archaeopteryx. They're probably flightless birds like a penguin, you know, where it's not made to fly, but it's still a bird. And they're all from Liaoning, which is strange. The place where they're coming up with all these, quote, feathered dinosaurs, but they're not, they're just flightless birds, are all coming from Liaoning. And they're all in the wrong layer because they should be, if they're true feathered dinosaurs, they should be below the first bird, Archaeopteryx, but they're above. It makes no sense. And another problem is that modern birds have been found with dinosaurs. And another problem is that birds evolved from the wrong type of dinosaurs. The meat-eating dinosaurs, the theropods, which are supposed to have evolved into birds, have lizard-shaped pelvis. But there's other dinosaurs, the plant eaters, have bird-shaped pelvis. You would think that if birds evolved from a dinosaur, they would have evolved from the one that has the same pelvis, so they didn't have to change all that anatomy around. I could do more on this, but I have to watch my time. And so I'm not going to do any more. If that's the best you have, and you do not have a single dinosaur that you can name that evolved into a dinosaur, into the Archaeopteryx, and you cannot name any of the in-between animals between the 200 and 150 million years old, and this is your best proof, this is just like what creation would say, that there would be no ancestors. Lastly, we did the interviews on the ape-men. This is the idea that a small ape evolved into a human. You've all seen the charts. And here is why this was disproved in 2024 and why the whole theory of evolution collapsed, because everything now is hanging on human evolution. Everything. And we revealed this in our book series, Volume 3, which is behind me, and Volume 4, the following information. After doing interviews with 40 of these scientists who were reporting ape-men. There were the evolution scientists who were promoting human evolution committed 150 frauds. These were not mistakes. These were knowing, misleading, dirty, dark frauds by these evolution scientists. And this chart here from the Time Life book had 13 frauds in it. You can read about that in my book, Volume 3. Tumai, which is the latest, hottest ape-man, that one had 4 frauds. Lucy, most people don't know this, had 3 frauds involved in Lucy. Homo habilis had 4 frauds. Homo erectus has 2 frauds. Prometheus had 30 frauds. Tongchild, Zinjanthropus, Neanderthal, Nebraska man, 1470 Paranthropus, Homo niger, Haeckel's embryos, Haeckel's ape-man comparisons, fraud, fraud, fraud. Who did these frauds? Don Johanson, Philip Tobias. It's basically a list, a who's who list of the paleoanthropologists. If you want to see these 150 frauds, and you don't believe me, and I wouldn't believe me without seeing this, you should watch episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8 of our video series, and we go through these 150 frauds that overturn human evolution in order. Fraud number 1, fraud number 2, all the way through 150, so you can see them. And here's more of the perpetrators. The second problem we uncovered, that 237 times, evolution scientists have announced that they have discovered an ape-man, but later it turns out it wasn't. They're overturned. Here's the list of the 237 overturned ape-men, which speaks that this field is totally unreliable. Like this first one is Tetraprothoma argentinus. That was a raccoon leg bone. This next one, Hesperopithecus harold cooksii. That was a pig tooth. The next one, Australopithecus prometheus. that was a dog leg, a cat hip bone, a cow or a bovid family skull mixed in with Australopithecine. Orsi man was a donkey skull. Flipperopithecus bozai turned out to be a dolphin's rib. And there's so many overturned ape-men species that I had to break them up into categories just to keep them straight. And here's the list of them. You can look at them. A lot of these are just redundant naming of the same thing, but the total was 237 ape-men have been overturned. The third problem with human evolution is that 42,000 times the evolution scientists picked up an ordinary rock and said it was an ape-man stone tool, only to later be told, no, that's just an ordinary rock. It was Raymond Dart with taking stalactites. It was these, they just look like ordinary rocks, but in the papers they said, no, these are pounders and anvils and the like. And the fourth problem with human evolution, don't forget, human evolution is the best proof of evolution, is that there's been hundreds of mistaken ape-man bone tools. Now, here's the evolution scientist diagram from his book here. And he says, look, I found this ape-man saw. Well, that's not an ape-man saw. That's just a antelope jaw turned upside down. No, I think it's an ape-man saw. Or here's an ape-man scrub brush. That's just an upper jawbone. All of these have been disproved, and again, showing the unreliability of this field. The fifth problem with human evolution is the thousands of mistaken ape-men age assignments were made. For example, Nebraska ape-man, then at the Nebraska site, was first thought to be 1 million years old. Then it was between 1 and 2 million years old. Then in another article, it was 3.6 million years old. Then it was 4 million years old. Then it was between 3.6 and 5.3 million years old. And finally, it was 5.3 million years old. And this is just Nebraska man. You could practically take any of these ape-men, and they have a whole list of dates, which shows that their dating methods are unreliable. The sixth problem with human evolution is that, and this is probably the most important, is that many scientists do not allow interested scientists and parties, like myself, we were filming this television series for national television, to inspect their ape-man fossils. And by doing this, they prevent them from being overturned. These fossils are non-verifiable. In science, everything has to be verifiable or it's considered non-scientific. But if you can't see the fossil and go and see the fossil and you have reason to say, I have the reason to come see it, and they won't let you, then it's a non-verifiable. And these are numerous, and they're present today too. But first of all, the first one was Pithecanthropus. Du Bois found this. This was the first Homo erectus. He kept it hidden for the first 24 years, from 1896 to 1920. He kept it under the floorboards of his kitchen, and then he moved it into a safe, but he wouldn't let anybody see it during the critical 24 years when he's promoting it. This fossil, Neanderthal fossil from La Chapelle aux Saints, he kept it hidden for 40 years. Piltdown man, they would not let scientists touch the bones, even like Louis Leakey coming to visit. He couldn't touch it. For 40 years, it was off limits. Toumai, off limits. Naledi, off limits. Sediba, Neanderthals, Lucy, Ardipithecus, Orion, and Turkana. You can't believe how many of these fossils are off limits. They would say, oh no, come on down, come see it. But when you actually go to visit them and film, or you talk to other scientists who try to go see them, when you show up, they will not let you touch them, which is very, very dark. The seventh problem with human evolution, this is the best proof of evolution, is that most current ape men are fragmentary. See, we don't have, we're 150 years since Darwin or something like that, 160 years. So we should by now have the small ape going to the big ape, to the bigger ape, to the upright ape, to the human, in pretty much full skeletons where there's no guessing. But look at these current ape men, like this, Homo habilis. This is the best skeleton they have. Well, you could make that into a monkey, ape, or a human, whatever you wanted to decide it was going to be. Or this one, Orion, off limits and also very fragmentary. You could interpret this any way you want. Or Ardipithecus, look how many fossils are missing. Only the colored areas are where they have fossils. It's not enough to say, well, this is definitely an ape-man. So the current ape-man in museums today, I'm saying that you go into the museum and go to the human evolution section, Most, if not all, are either fraud-based fossils, fragmentary fossils, or inaccessible fossils. The fraud-based ones are Tumai lucy, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthal, Homo rudolfensis. The fragmentary, you can read those, and the inaccessible, non-verifiable fossils are Tumai lucy, Ardipithecus lucy, et cetera, et cetera. So if that's the best proof and it goes completely against all the evidence, we can't form the universe, we can't form life, we can't form the 7 animal phyla, we can't form the groups within a phyla, the mechanisms of evolution don't work. The 3 best proofs of evolution, walking whales was all made up, flying dinosaurs, you don't have the ancestors to the first bird, and ape-man. If this is the best you got with the 150 frauds and 237 overturned ape-men, inaccessible fossils, fragmentary fossils, then this theory has collapsed. And this would be the best, biggest news of our lifetime. You know, it's very rare that you get to live through a theory getting overturned, like Galileo and Copernicus overturning, you know, how the universe is laid out, whether the Earth or the sun was the center of the universe, or our solar system, or the time of Pasteur when he's overturning spontaneous generation. Those are exciting times, and I never thought in my life that I would be living during this time. But if you agree that those 9 X's are justified, then evolution just collapsed right in front of us, and I kind of missed it. These things just kind of pop into my lap, and I didn't see it when I was filming it, but here it is. You know, this information is not going to do anyone any good unless the kids get it. The 6th grade or 7th grade on up should take a 4-semester course with my 4 books and the videos, and they will be ready by the time they get to high school and college to refute their professors on the theory of evolution. If you send your kids or grandkids to school and haven't prepped them on these apologetics for these topics, they're going to get creamed, just like I got creamed. I believed in evolution just because of what my professor said. This is imperative that everybody get this started in their schools, in their home schools, church schools, public schools. I beg of you to do that for the kids. If you're a visual person and you like to do the videos, there's an 8-part video series you can either buy by DVD or streaming video, and they're all shot on location all over the world. They're fantastic, you know, like PBS quality videos. And if you're a reader, get the 4 books of the book series and just start reading. And I just want to tell you that the books are very easy to read. You don't need a science background at all. You know, if you're a homemaker, you can burn through these books because every word is explained. They're just simple explanations, but yet they're highly scientific, and highly accurate. But each book has around 900 photographs that Debbie took. And so they're very visual, and you can really understand evolution and the problems it has. So I'm going to turn my screen share off, and thank you for listening to my presentation. So now I'm going to turn this over to a different university. I know that we're at Northwestern in St. Cloud right now, but I'm going to turn this over to Brian Lauer, who's at St. Cloud University with the creation group there. And Brian's going to do some announcements. And then after he does the announcements, then we're going to come back and do Q&A. And I would appreciate if you would criticize my ideas. So Brian, take it away.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Werner. That was quite a presentation. You hit it out of the park. I knew you would. And those books, I mean, we got all the books, we got all the videos. It's such a tremendous resource for everybody. And I highly recommend everybody get it and also support them. And those coffee table books, I had them at St. Cloud State at the kiosk, and I showed people, and they just, wow, you know, the Lucy's hip being twisted, and also the Piltdown or Nebraska man. It's just high quality. So I encourage everybody to get them. Get them for Christmas presents, birthday presents. Everybody you know should have these books, because he's right. This is when evolution falls apart. And let's see, I just want to thank everybody, you know, and welcome everybody. to St. Cloud State here. This is a lot of fun. This is the first that we've ever done at St. Cloud State, and there's a lot more firsts coming. And if everybody could get your calendar out, because I want to give you some important dates and some important information, or pen and paper. And while you're doing that, I'll give you some 2025 highlights, what I think's coming. There's some tremendous opportunities. There's some things that we've never done before at TCCSA, and I'm excited about that. But there's also challenges that we've never had. The room at Northwestern used to be free, and now it's $100 a night, and it's going up to $150 a night. Plus, we have to have $400 of insurance a year. So eventually, it's going to be $2,000 a year for us to get that room. And if you have deep pockets and you want to help us out, we'd sure appreciate it. And if you don't have deep pockets and you want to sponsor a 1 month or 2 months, we'd appreciate that too. And people can also contribute with their IRA. You can make a donation to TCCSA as we're tax exempt, and then you don't have to pay income tax on that, or it doesn't get taxed as income. And so there's options there, and we'll see how God provides. And then I'd just like to thank everybody who's given in the past, because you're the ones that keep this club going. And I also encourage everybody to become a member. It's $20 for the whole year, which is very reasonable. If you're in Houston, it would be $50 for the year. And if you want to give online, we have a givesendgo.com account. That's givesendgo.com, and our account is TCCSA. Okay, that's kind of the detail stuff. And hopefully you're at your calendar. And I'd like you to go to April 22nd, 7 o'clock, type in TCCSA Andy McIntosh Day. And this is the speaker of the year. And this is what, and this is one of the first things we've done too. We're having it on the 4th Tuesday instead of the 3rd. And the reason we're doing that is because Andy McIntosh is in Minnesota. He's from England, and he's been criticized by Richard Dawkins by name. And so I really want to hear his stories. So, put that in your calendar. And then after that, put a name of somebody that you really enjoy being with, but you never have time for it. So just celebrate on that day. Give him a call and say, hey, let's go out, and then go listen to Andy McIntosh. And celebrate it like Christmas. Christmas comes every year, but Andy may not be coming back again. And then a couple of days later, we're having our very first TCCSA retreat, if you will. We're going to just go down to the Living Water Bible Camp Creation Conference. That's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it's just $99 for the whole thing. And that includes lodging. It includes meals. And this is a picture that I took there. It's just a beautiful place, rolling hills, a trout stream. And just they got stuff for the whole family, too. So it could be a nice creation vacation, and you all learn about creation. And then next month is going to be Bruce Malone. And it's going to be March 18th, and he's going to talk about the awesomeness of God. And look at that image. I mean, isn't that a professional image? And that's one of our volunteers, Ben, made that. And so it's such a blessing. And then his sister, Abigail, is putting together our new website, which is going to be online, I think, on the 22nd. And it's just beautiful. And that's made possible by the generous donations from Ross. So thank them for that. And so we need volunteers. We need to start getting more volunteers, because if we don't, nobody's going to know how to run the club in the future. And this is another picture from that Bible camp. And if you want to help out, there's first places you can reach. We really need some help with Zoom and YouTube. I mean, Ross, he's really good at bringing people to the thing, but he's behind the Zoom camera. So if we can free him up, we can get this in front of more people. And also we need outreach people for the colleges, churches, homeschoolers, families, retired people. And I think the sleeping giant in all of that is the retired people. You don't have a boss. Nobody can hold you back from doing what you can help out with here. We could use some help with social media and promotions, and also board members. Ideally, we would mentor somebody to step into our shoes as we step away. And but if we don't, somebody might get thrown in and get frustrated. And that's typically when organizations and churches and businesses collapse, is when they're getting passed on to the next generation. So we'd like to start mentoring more people. And with TCCSA, this is what you're going to be working for. This is our mission. Basically, in a nutshell, we want to reach young people, church leaders, and unbelievers. Okay, so let's take a quick survey here. If you're older than age 40, raise your hand nice and high so Emily can count it. And if you're watching online, type in older or younger. Also put down how you found out about this talk. I'm very curious about that. And also, we're supposed to reach church leaders. And raise your hand if you're a church leader, or type in church in the chat. Okay, and also unbeliever. If you're an unbeliever, raise your hand for that or type in unbeliever. And if I was a betting man, I would bet that most people are over 40 years old at the meeting. And there's probably less than a handful of people that are church leaders or unbelievers. So I think there's room to improve on reaching the next generation. And we're looking for new ideas, really. And what we can do is this video is going to premiere Saturday night at 7 o'clock on YouTube. And you'll be able to chat away. We can communicate. We can brainstorm ideas and how we can do a better job of reaching the youth and the church leaders and the unbelievers. And then it's like, well, why do you want to get involved? Well, I hope this motivates you. Okay, this is that top line. That's the percentage of people that believe that God made man in his present form less than 10,000 years ago. It's 37% of Americans. So we're the majority. Okay, but the bottom line, that's the percentage of Americans that believe that man came about by blind chance without God. That's 24%. If we zoom in on that, just the last 12 years snapshot, creationists have lost 9%, and the Big Bang or the blind chancers have gained 9%. And if we follow that trend into the future, they're going to be ahead of us. And I don't know if you want to reverse that trend, raise your hand or type in yes. But the real question is, are you willing to do something to help reverse that trend? And that's what we need. And that's if your hand's still up for that or you're typing yes, that's what TCCSA Action is for. Okay, this is for people who want to do more than just get information and go home. They want to get this information and impact the culture with it. They want to get informed and inform other people. And this is what the action, you go into TCCSA at proton.me, and this is a perk for the members. And you're going to get more than 2 emails a month. Like yesterday, Bethel would allow us to have a table yesterday to promote this talk, but hardly anybody knew about it. And the people that did know about it didn't take advantage of it. So if you want to know about these opportunities, sign up for that. And also, when we emailed out the list, it didn't have the promo in it. And so we lost an opportunity to share that. Wrap it up real quickly here. Next month is Bruce Malone, but the thing that we want to really focus on is April 22nd, Andy McIntosh Day. That's the speaker of the year. That's what you want to get everybody to. We want to fill that place. And with that, I better get it back to Dr. Werner for some Q&As. And thank you so much for what you've done, Doctor. This has been phenomenal.
Oh, my pleasure. And I just want to tell the audience that I would love it if you would criticize my presentation, that you would tear it down. This is like King of the Hill. If I say that the theory doesn't work and you disagree, I might get knocked off the hill. My ideas are wrong. So I want to hear criticisms because they'll help me.
Yeah, Dr. Werner, my name is Glenn Larson. I'm a faculty member here at Northwestern. And I understand everything that you said, and it's quite logical. Most of what you presented, it seems to me, has been available even in the form that you gave it for a long time. I'm just wondering why you said that 2024 is the year that it all falls down, because I'm not sure I see that happening necessarily. I see that it could have been 2022, or it could have been 2019, or it could have been 2000 even, for for all these frauds that have been around for a long time. I'm just wondering what makes 2024, particularly the year that everything gelled, came together and became evident that this is the year that they're going to look back on and say everything fell apart, and naturalistically.
Why don't you stay up there in case you have a follow-up question? But that's a great question. And I appreciate, because this will clarify it not only for you, but for everyone else in the audience. Why did I say 2024? First of all, most of these dates for these other pieces on the 9 bullets are past, like Big Bang 2003, the origin of life from chemicals, they've known that since 1970. The Cambrian explosion, that was known since 1970. Stephen Jay Gould's problems with the trade secret of paleontology, that was 1978. The dates that were closer to 2024, leading up to 2024, was the whale evolution, and that was based on our 3 interviews around 2010 through 2017, somewhere around there. But that's still not your date you're looking for. Then the bird evolution, same dates, around 2010, 2015. But in 2024, we meaning Debbie and I, my wife, released this book series, this volume 3 and 4 of the series, where big news in human evolution came out. Nobody's recognizing this, by the way, but big news and the news that came out in 2024 was that there was 150 frauds. And by the way, most people don't know of any of those other than Piltdown Man. So most people would say, I only knew maybe 1 or 2 of them, but not all 150. The other thing that came out in the book series is that there was all these overturned ape-men, 237 species. That number is new to everybody. And the other, about the 42,000 stone tools have been overturned, and all the points that I was making, that all came out in the book series in 2024 or early 2024. Now, I also really want to clarify this, is that when I say evolution is overturned in 2024, what I'm saying is, first of all, nobody's going to recognize this for 30 to 40 years. It's going to, 5 years from now, it's going to feel the same as the scientists are dying off, like Max Planck said, the scientists have to die off. But historians, let's say in 2050, 2060, are going to start looking back when everybody does get it, say, okay, yeah, well, it is over, but when did it happen? And that's when it comes back to the last important bullet, which is human evolution got overturned in 2024. Now, you could argue that just because there's 150 frauds and just because most of the fossils in the museums today, a lot of them are fraudulent basis, are fragmentary, are inaccessible, that's not enough to overturn the theory. I say it is, in light of the bigger picture, because everything is missing all the way down to you get to the human ape-men problem. And then it's so bad. There's so many problems that many of them were revealed in 2024. That's why I say it. But you could say 2022, and you could say it hasn't been overturned yet. I would not disagree with anybody. But if I was objective and standing back, I would say 2024 is good enough for me. And to me, it doesn't really matter the nuance of, when, but that fact that it did get overturned is like, this was the last column of the building standing. And once human evolution got pushed down, and by the way, the only reason and a possibility that it was overturned is that Debbie and I went and did the interviews. You can't, even the evolution scientists can't get this information. You have to go do the interviews, put them on camera, so you got it recorded, and you have to photograph the original fossils. And Debbie, I'm sorry to be answering so long, but Debbie and I went into all these museum vaults and photographed the original fossils in the museum vaults, the ones that they would allow us to see. And it turns out the pictures in the books don't match the original fossils. And it turns out the copies in the museums of the fossils that are on display, they don't match the fossils. There's a big disconnect for like Homo habilis and Tumai and the like. So that would be my answer to you. And if you had a follow-up question, I'd love to take that too, but that's my answer.
No, I don't think so, other than I agree with that idea that it takes the generation. People get into a generation, and an entire generation just hangs on and clings to that. And the new generation has to come up with the right thing in order to do it. It works in politics as well. It seems like, the Soviet Union doesn't get broken up until all of the old guard dies off. So
Yes, yeah.
kind of thing. So, no, that's a good explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I remember reading about when Darwin's book first came out, Origin of Species, that somebody had to grab a hold of it and take it ahead, take it forward. So I agree with you, Dr. Werner. We need this next generation to really step up, as well as the rest of us, and not sit by. And I have kind of a sister question to this former question, and that is, why do people who are hailed as great apologists like um, Frank Turek, I just recently saw one of his presentations, and he's standing in front of an audience and he's saying he can't make up his mind whether the earth was created in 6 days, or, he believes in theistic evolution. If there is all this evidence, why do we have people like, and I'm not trying to badmouth him, I'm just trying to understand, why do we have people like him that can stand up and say they're great defenders of the faith, and they can't make up their mind on this issue?
Thank you. It's a great question. It's a fair question. It's a question of our time because the Christian community is split between believing in evolution, not believing in evolution, young earth, old earth, and all that. Now, my answer is going to seem incredibly arrogant, so just look past it, okay? So I was planning to release our last book in the series on geology, and each of these books takes 4 or 5 years to put together and all that, and we have just more or less been stopped because of circumstances, because we lost our publisher, so I had to do the publishing myself. It's just all these extra reasons and everything else I have to do. So we have not taken up writing up the last book in the series on geology. And that book, if you read it, and if I wrote it, if I presented it, would clarify this. And the reason that Frank Turek and others don't know is they have none of the information. Just like tonight's talk, I would say most people have none of this information. Most of it was new for everybody. People have none of the information on geology and why it points to a young Earth in incredibly, fashion. I mean, it's not like, oh, I think this or could be this, but this strong evidence. So, until I get a green light that, yeah, people want me to do the next book, because I have to get this first human evolution book out on my own, and it's going good. But until then, my best way to do that would be just to explain to people the principles that would be in the book. And once you see them, you would then conclude that the earth is not old, but that it was the result of a saltwater cataclysmic Noachian flood. And the evidences are, I'm just going to give it to you if you want to write the book up for me, it would be a lot simpler. But here's the evidences real quick, is that every layer of the earth, and you've never heard this, and the only reason I know it is because we have photographed these 100,000 fossils or whatever. Every layer of the earth contains modern animals. And you would say, what is he talking about? But you just saw one that was at sea pen down in the lowest layer of the Eddy Cairn. Number two, every layer of the earth contains saltwater creatures that were fossilized in the middle of the continents. Every layer. So every layer has saltwater creatures, every layer has modern creatures, and every layer has extinct animals in them. Probably a ratio of 99-1, meaning that whatever caused this event killed off most of the animals. And so that would go along with the flood, the great extinction event. It's just one event, not 5 different asteroids or whatever. And then the last major point is that all over the world, in these sedimentary rock layers, which are flat, there are trees that are vertical that go through 3-4 layers. And that tells you that those layers were laid down rapidly, because a tree can't stay standing up for more than 100 or 200 years, maybe 1,000, but not millions of years as these layers formed around it. So the layers were all laid down quickly, and the evidence for that is these vertical fossils. And then the last bit of evidence is that all the layers are basically flat without erosion, and that you can go to any dig site, and I can already tell you what the dig site, leader is going to say. He's going to say, this area here was a flat area. And see, he's just describing that the layers have no erosion in them. And there's only one place in the world where erosion doesn't occur, and that's underwater. Because once the ground is exposed to air and water comes across it, it causes erosion channels like creeks and rivers. So the um, the fact that all the layers are more or less flat without erosion means that they were all laid down underwater in a single cataclysmic event. So you could say a prayer that I get, the green light to do that book. Otherwise, feel free to take all that information and pass it to the next person, because it would be terrible if I died with that information and then it just dies. So have them watch this video if I croak tomorrow, okay?
Where do they get books and your DVDs?
Oh, thank you. Listen, the cheapest way to get our books and videos is to go to my website. It's called thegrandexperiment.com. Thegrandexperiment.com. There's no spaces between the grand and experiment. Thegrandexperiment.com. And on our website, we always point you to the least expensive options, whether you're buying them internationally or locally. But, Amazon a lot of times doesn't have the best prices. We point you to the least expensive version. And if you like the hard copy books and you can afford them, a lot of them are like $35. They're beautiful because they're like coffee table books, and you can see them behind me. But if you don't have any money, you can do this whole thing electronically, very cheap. In other words, you can buy this $34 book here, but buy instead the PDF of it. And the PDF is beautiful. You just read it on your computer, and it only costs $14. And you can, instead of buying the DVD, or if you don't have a DVD player, you can rent each of the episodes for I think it's $4 or something. And all this you can find on our website. But the most important thing is each person figures out how to get this into the schools, because otherwise we are sunk. We're going to have this loss of the entire nation if we can't get the truth out.
Do you know Bruce Malone?
That name sounds very familiar, but I live under a rock because I've been doing all these interviews. I don't know anybody in the creation field because I just haven't been around. So no, I don't, but tell me about him.
He's published a lot of books, and I think you need to get a hold of him. I can send you his contact information.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
It says in can't remember now if it's First Peter or Second Peter about false teachers, and I just wanted to ask you in relation to those who are actually can't make up their mind between the Genesis account of creation and the flood and theistic evolution. Have you encountered any of these folks that have seemingly big reputations for being defenders of the faith, but they're really false teachers? Is there, because we're really in a battle here. So I just wondered what your experience is in this arena.
Thank you. I have no experience, like I say, because I live under a rock. I don't know a lot of these leaders and organizations. Debbie and I have had our head down for 27 years filming, and it's really put me in a hard place because I don't know anybody. But my take on this is these are not our enemies, but these are our friends, and they just haven't got the information. And I think if you take them on hard like they're bad people, they might just be honestly seeking the truth, and they have never ever heard like what I just told you about the geology, for example. So I think, and I don't know if I'm the right way to, if this is the right way to do it, but I think we should all do a soft sell to our friends who believe in the old earth or in evolution. Both evolution believers and old earth believers just don't have any of this information. So I would just say, like Brian Lauer says, get the books and entice them to read the book. And the book's very inviting. It never mentions God and doesn't mention God's son. And it only just talks about fossils, you know, and then you have to decide what that means. So I'm merciful because I was fooled by my professor. The people in Christendom have been fooled by their professors. But if there was something you could do, if you can get me in front of them, you know, even a hostile environment, I don't care. I would love to give them the information, you know, and let them ask their hardest questions, because I think that's where we really need to go with this is let me bring the information to the community, you know.
I have always been taught that evolution is a religion. So I don't know how to put those two things together. They believe these things and they present these things and they even falsify information. So I'm really struggling with the soft stell idea here. I hope it's okay to ask this question.
Heck yeah. You know, the body of Christ is very different. The finger is different than the toes, you know, and you might be a toe and you're the kicker and I'm the finger saying, come this way. And you kick the brother in the rear, say, come on, this is too important for you to be mistaken on this. And so there's no right answer. Sometimes I think I might be more effective by talking to the heart issues, because here's my problem. I can make this presentation to 1,000 evolution scientists, and 997 of them, practically everyone, will not change. And it has nothing to do with the facts and the correct information and informing, but it has to do with the heart. Because I'll tell you my personal story, and this is a little private, but I might as well share it. But, you know, like when my friend in college asked me those 3 questions about evolution, and I couldn't answer them, and I realized evolution can't be true, even though I had no other information to go along with it. I then knew up here that evolution was wrong or incorrect. But here, I didn't want to do anything with it, because I knew that this is very personal, if I really believed what was up here, then I was going to have to change everything in my life, you know, as a 19-year-old. Everything was going to have to change, because I was like, I would have to change everything, because I was a pagan who was brought up in a Christian home. You know, I was a pagan, you know, and it's like, when I was confronted with this, you're going to have to make a decision, you know, you're going to follow God, Christ, or are you going to just turn your back? And it's like, I knew I needed to do it. I knew I wanted to do it, but it took me 6 months of arduous, heart-wrenching, you know, cloth-tearing, internal discussion just with myself. It's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to give this up, give this up, give this up. And it all turned out to be a heart issue. Once I had the information, that was not enough. I still had to do the heart issue. So I don't know. I think you should still keep kicking. I'm serious about that. And I should keep, you know, begging with the fingers. And Ross or somebody else should be given the spiritual message that really it's not about evolution, it's about your heart, and you just don't want to give up your control of your life to an all-powerful God. You know why I was worried that if I gave my life to Christ, like my friend later suggested I had to do, is that, dang it, I know exactly what's going to happen to me. I'm going to have to go to Timbuktu in Africa and be a missionary doctor, and I'm going to have to be eating, you know, straw or something, and you know, it would be like the worst thing that I'd ever want to do. Or I'd send me to India, someplace I didn't want to go and bury dead bodies or something like that. That's what my idea of Christianity was at that point, you know, is that if I gave my life to Christ, that he would then require me, because I made him the Lord of my life, he would require me to go to Timbuktu or New Delhi. And I was like, I am not ready to do that. I'm not ready to give up my sin. I'm not ready to do, So it was a huge, huge, huge 6-month battle. But the day I did it and made my decision, man, I became the happiest guy on campus. People used to come up to me right after I made that decision, and they still did for a long time. They'd come up to me as I was walking at the university. I'd be walking to my next class, and total strangers would come up and just say, "Hey, I don't know you, but why are you always so happy?" And I'd say, "I didn't realize I was happy. I really didn't realize, but I had just been taking this load off of my shoulder of sin and stuff. And it's like, I didn't realize I was happy, but I should have had my answer ready that, well, I just got rid of my sin and now I believe in God. And that's probably why I'm smiling, but I didn't even realize that I'm walking around campus like this, but that's how I felt. And before that day, before I gave my life to Christ, I was ready to end it all. Life was too painful, even if I had everything as a doctor and a medical student, all that. No, it was miserable. So I went from total misery to total happiness, and so that's where I want to bring people to. But that's not my main purpose. My main purpose is to teach people about the science, and everybody else has to do their part. Kicking, preaching, cajoling. It's your part now.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate what you had to say. My name is Nathan. What do you think they will replace it with if if there isn't a huge revival, which would be awesome.
Nathan, could you hold on just a second? You're
Yeah.
asking if an evolutionist realized that evolution is not true, what is he going to replace it with if they don't choose God?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a tough question because gosh dang it, I think it's either yin or yang. It's like, well, if evolution doesn't work, that's how my mind worked. That I guess God is true, because then you have to go to some really crazy stuff if you're not going to acknowledge God created the universe and that the layers were laid down by a flood. If you're not going to acknowledge that, then and if evolution isn't true, then you got to start thinking of these crazy ideas that life evolved on another planet and the Martians were dropping elephants onto the earth and that's how the elephants got here and aliens brought baby aliens and that's where it came. I don't know what you come up with, but
We are getting close to, well, we passed the time we normally close. We have to stop the recording.